Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Building Your Personal Brand, Part 1 of our Personal Development Series. My name is Kelly Blount, and I'm the Program Marketing Specialist here at General Electric Credit Union. We're so glad you've joined us as we have a great discussion planned for you, and we wanted to thank you all for tuning in from the comfort of wherever you may be joining us from today. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to today's guest speaker, GECU's very own Jerry Kail, to introduce himself and take us through today's topic.
Okay, thank you so much, Kelly. I appreciate that. And welcome to everybody for our session today. So our session today, building your personal brand. So today, what we're going to do, we're going to explore this concept of a personal brand. What it is, why it's important, and how you can create and utilize a personal brand to help you in your career progression, whether it involves charting a path in your current organization or exploring opportunities in the job market or for starting your own business. And I just want to start by observing that in the rush of events in our work lives over the weeks, months, and years, it can be difficult to just pause and reflect on who we are and how we've created success for ourselves and for others and for our organizations. So you can think of today as giving yourself that chance to pause and do some self-reflection. And I want to congratulate you for taking the time to do that. Today, you're going to gain some frameworks and tools for how you can make good use of this reflection time to take stock of those things that make you who you are and to help you realize the unique value that you can offer to others. So, a little bit more about myself. As Kelly said, I am Jerry Kail, Manager of Leadership and Organizational Development with GECU. I've been with the credit union for a little over 4 years, but overall, I have more than 20 years of experience developing and conducting leadership and professional development programs for large organizations, connecting people with ideas, tools, and resources to help them be the best leaders and performers they can possibly be. So, I'm really happy to have the opportunity to share with you some best practices for creating and communicating your personal brand. So what we're going to be focusing on today, we're going to focus, first of all, I like definitions. And you've heard that term brand a lot, and you might not have really stopped and thought, well, what exactly is a brand? How do we define that? So we're going to explore that. What is a brand? We've heard of brand as a term that's used with organizations. What we're going to find, though, is that individuals can also have a brand, given the definition that we have. And then we're going to be looking at specifically how you can capture what your brand is in something called a personal brand statement. So we're going to give you an opportunity to really understand a little bit more about some of the components of that and some suggestions for how you can go about creating that. Once you have it created, the important thing then is to be able to communicate that brand. And this has to do with the interactions that you have with people in your environment. So we're going to talk about different opportunities you may have for communicating the brand that you have. And then we're going to talk about the all-important aspect of interacting with people, getting them to know you, understanding what you can create. I'm talking about your network. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can create and how you can go about actually interacting effectively with people in your network as you go about searching for opportunities. All right. So we're going to start off with our personal brand journey by talking about the term branding. It's long been used in regard to companies. So what is a brand? Well, a company's brand can be represented by a lot of different things. The company name, its logo, a tagline such as "Just Do It," a mascot, even the product itself. Ultimately, though, we can define the term brand in this way. A brand is a promise. A brand is a promise. It's a promise that when you patronize or do business with that company, you're going to expect a certain level of service, quality, and relationship. A brand then sets a certain expectation of what we'll experience when we interact with that company. And that expectation can be positive, or if the promise is broken by a bad interaction, it can be negative. Now, just as companies have a brand, so does every individual have a personal brand. Your brand or reputation is a compilation of what you have accomplished, the style and approach you take on the job, the quality of your work, and how you show up to others. It represents your values, experiences, and overall interaction with others. And that personal brand sets an expectation of what other people will get when they interact with you. And I'm sure each of us wants that expectation to be positive, and we want the actual experience others have of us to be positive as well. Now, not everyone consciously cultivates their personal brand, but they do exist. Those brands do exist, whether we consciously cultivate them or not. So the question is no longer if you have a personal brand, but how you intentionally choose to guide and reinforce your brand in a positive direction. So today, we'll focus on ways that you can be clear in your own mind about what your brand is and how you can express it in a way that leaves the impression you want to leave with people who can facilitate your career movement. So a brand consists of your background, your assets, and the value you create. And I'm going to be using the term your value add as a shorthand for the term the value you create. So let's talk about each of those briefly. Your background, it refers to such things as your education, credentials, and work history. Assets refers to the whole complement of your skills, strengths, knowledge, expertise, characteristics, motivators, and personal values. And your value add means the things you've done to contribute to the success of the companies you've worked for and the people with whom you've interacted. You can think of it as your track record, and it points the way to the likely value you'll continue to create in the future. There's an old saying that goes, the best indicator of future performance is past performance in similar situations. And as one author has referred to it, these are the things that constitute brand you, the things that build your credibility in others' eyes as a capable and committed performer. Now, the concept of a brand, it can sound somewhat abstract since much of it involves the feelings, thoughts, and experiences that you engender in other people. So to make it more concrete, I'd like to talk about how you can capture your brand in the form of what we call a personal brand statement. Now, a personal brand statement will help you reflect on and express what is uniquely you. The process of creating a personal brand statement will also help you be intentional about forming and living up to your brand. And it will continually remind you that a brand needs to be more than words on paper or on a screen. You need to regularly live your brand for it to create the positive experience you want others to have when they think about you and interact with you. So today I'd like to cover 3 steps in the process of personal branding: create, communicate, and confirm. By the way, in the resources, we've included a downloadable worksheet that you can use going forward to help you create your personal brand statement. And this is going to encapsulate everything that I'm going to be talking about now, the inputs into it, and how you can go about creating that statement. So we start with the creation. And to start creating your personal brand statement, list your chief assets. In other words, the things at which you excel, especially the things that make you unique or distinctive. And of course, we can start off with your background, your education, work experience, credentials, such as professional credentials and certifications. I mean, these are important, naturally, but be thinking particularly about what might be some distinctive combinations of different aspects of your background. For example, you might have several years experience in serving and advising clients, let's just say in a banking environment, but while also serving as a trainer and advisor to new banking employees. Well, that combination would be a definite plus if you were seeking a training role in a financial services organization. Also list your skills, and there's 2 different categories of skills. Functional skills, those are the skills specific to a certain discipline or industry. For example, in my profession as a learning and development consultant, functional skills would include applied knowledge of consulting practices and adult learning principles. Power skills, also sometimes called transferable skills or soft skills, a term I personally tend to avoid since there's nothing soft about them. These are skills relating to leadership, communication, and collaboration, which can potentially apply to any position. So this could include skills such as influencing others, showing empathy, or handling conflict. Another area to reflect on is your strengths. What are those things you do that come naturally to you and that you naturally do well? Now, there are several books on the Strengths Finder concept, which contain self-surveys to help you identify your strengths. I would highly recommend those. Also in the resources section, we've included a link to a list of strengths and power skills that you could choose from in defining your personal brand. You can also list, as it shows on the screen, your personal core values, the things that guide you and motivate you. These beliefs determine how you work, and employers want to hire candidates who have values that align with the values of the company. And again, we've also included a list of core values in the resources that you can choose from. So these are all the things that go into what we call your assets. They describe who you are, what you do, and what's characteristic and even unique about the way you work. But you don't want to stop there. If your assets represent the what of you, that is, what you're all about, then the value you create represents the so what. All right, so you have certain skills, strengths, and values. So what? What does that mean for the organizations you've worked for, the people you've served, the community in which you live? This is what you're going to want to highlight for people who might consider hiring you for a new role, whether in your current organization or a new organization or as an independent contractor. So look for themes then you want to emphasize, those things you regularly or repeatedly do to create value. For organizational value, consider how you regularly help improve the bottom line or influence the adoption of new ideas or find ways to continually improve processes. For people, consider how you create solid teams or help people who struggle with change, or maybe how you've gone the extra mile to serve customers. For community, consider how you volunteer your time to help others in need. These are the things that actually lead into your value adds. So your assets and your value adds, this is the value you create by exercising those assets. That's the raw material that can feed into your personal branding statement. Now, to help you boil down all of this input, it might help to consider how you would answer this question. If I had to trade in my name for one word that best describes me, what word would I choose and why? Okay. This can be fairly challenging, but this is a good way to start to reflect on what is the core essential aspect of what I do and what I can create value for other people. And this is actually all based on a great initiative at the College of the Pacific called the One Word Project, in which students were asked this very question to help spur their self-reflection about what was absolutely essential for them to have and achieve in their lives as they embarked on their careers. I'll give you an example from my own personal experience. When I've done this activity, my one word is connector. Connector. I see myself as a person who creatively connects people with ideas and resources that can help them succeed in their careers and their lives. And this has shown up in a lot of different ways. This has been a theme in my presentations to people. I use clips from popular movies to illustrate points about leadership and teamwork. I use improvisational theater techniques to help people be more adaptable to new situations. So these are the types of things that really play into what I believe is my essence. It's being in that connector role. Now, one word, it can be an effective exercise to help you focus yourself on your distinctive assets and value adds, and to help you craft communications to others about how you create value for organizations and people. In the resources section, we've also included a link to a YouTube video that gives a good illustration and description about the One Word Project. So I would encourage you to check that out as well. So I'm going to give you a simple example then of what we've been talking about here, the creation of your personal branding statement. How this might look for someone from the banking industry. They might say, okay, my background, 7 years in banking. My skills and my strengths, deep knowledge of financial products and markets, customer focus, handling conflict, rapport building. And some of those are very much functional skills, the deep knowledge. Others are more of those power skills, my interaction, people skills. My values, if I reflect on my values, I might say, one of my strong values, it just comes naturally to me, I've reflected on everything I do, is service to others. And then if I were to do the one word activity in this particular case, this person who is looking at their banking career, their overall career, just what they are, this person might say, you know what, I think empathizer is the word. And what I mean by that, I show genuine care and concern for people and explore ways that I can help them. The value add then, reflecting on those things. What do I repeatedly and continually do? What has been a theme throughout, and how have I created good results for people? You might say things like listening and putting customers first. I help them identify needs and opportunities they may not have been aware of themselves. I then use my financial knowledge to match them with solutions for those needs. And then by identifying or building a rapport and identifying needs, I create long-term customer relationships, mutually benefit customers and the organization. So this information then that you're gathering and thinking and refining at this point can then be formed into a personal branding statement. And here's just one example, a couple of sentences. I'm an experienced banking professional with a solid track record of building long-term customer relationships by showing genuine care and concern for people and their needs. My strong personal commitment to service first and deep knowledge of financial situations has repeatedly paid off in mutual benefits for customers and organizations alike. So this personal branding statement, it draws on the skills, the knowledge of the banking industry. It also draws on that one word, empathizer, really being service-oriented toward people, getting to know them. And by doing those and putting those together, the branding statement also reflects the benefits, both for the customers you've served and for the organizations. You can boil this down even further. One of the things that you can do as you're doing your branding and thinking about yourself is continually think about how can I hone it down just a little bit more in order to get at some of the essential expressions. And there's another activity called the 10-word activity that I've used quite a lot. This is a way to create a tagline for yourself. Express yourself in 10 words or less. Another potentially challenging thing, but also very useful. And this is a way that this person might boil down to 10 words. Creating value through genuine commitment, care, and concern for people. So that kind of becomes, like I say, their tagline that they can use. And we'll talk a little bit in a bit about how you can actually put that into different communications. Like I say, it's a great way to challenge yourself to zero in on what's distinctive about you. So you can answer the question, if my audience remembers nothing else about me, this is what I want them to know. This is the experience I want to leave them with. But there's one more important step. Once you have your personal branding statement, one more important step to take in creating your personal brand statement. While self-reflection, that's what we've been doing up to now, it's incredibly important, you also need to try to see yourself as others see you. So review the assets and value add you've identified and ask yourself, how closely does this match other people's perceptions of me? It's important for your career development and for your search for opportunities to know how others see you. And certainly one of the reasons is because you're trying to make a powerful, positive impression on others. So they will provide you with opportunities. You want to know if you're coming across to others the way you intend. And another reason for getting that external view is because others can help you create and validate your personal brand statement by providing you feedback. They can open your eyes to things about yourself that you may not be aware of, both things you're doing well and things you might need to work on. To help you with this, you can create something called a personal board of directors. Now, a personal board of directors can consist of colleagues, coworkers, friends, family members, and other trusted advisors. And you can draw on members of your board of directors in several ways. For example, you can share your self-assessment of your assets and value adds and get their feedback. What do they agree with? What would they add or change? You can share your thoughts about the things you know you may need to work on in your development. What do they agree with? What suggestions do they have for development actions you might take? And if you're the type of person who tends to be very self-critical, like many of us are, you may also hear from them that, hey, you're doing better in certain areas than you give yourself credit for. So a lot of good benefit to get that external view of trusted advisors. So once you've created that personal branding statement, the create is the first piece, what you then need to be thinking about is how you can use that, how you can communicate that. Here are some of the major ways to communicate, and there can be many more beyond these. This is just kind of scratching the surface. Some of these might involve using your full branding statement, while others might involve your, I guess what I would call the 10-word version of your statement. Your resume is a place, of course. You can include both the full and the condensed version at the top of the resume page for a very quick snapshot of who you are. Your LinkedIn profile is a great place, especially for your more extensive personal brand statement. If you have a personal web page and or a blog that goes along with that, if you write a blog, there's another great opportunity for you to use your personal branding statement. Business card, that's a great place for that tagline, for that 10 words or less statement of what you can provide. Email signature also is a place that you can do that. So when you're sending your emails, always to have that there. So it's, again, this impression that you can continue to communicate. Elevator talk. Okay, elevator talk. This is a metaphor for situations where you might have the opportunity for a quick conversation with someone, say for the length of an elevator ride. That's where the term derives from. The idea then is to be able to pique the person's interest in what you might be able to provide so they would be open to continuing the conversation. And this isn't about reciting a memorized script, but it's more about focusing your description of yourself on some key words you've incorporated into your branding statement, such as genuine, care, value. And then interviews. Many interviewers, from my experience, will start off with the general question, so can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Now, having a branding statement can help you answer that question and make a great first impression by showing that you've thought through who you are and what you're all about and the value you can bring to others. And again, the idea is not to rattle off a script, but to draw on all of the inputs you used to create your branding statement, your skills, strengths, personal values, and especially the value you create for others, to create a succinct response and get off to a flying start in that interview. And that leads us then to the third part of the branding statement process that I'd like to talk about today, confirming the branding statement. If you've created a brand statement that you feel describes your skills, strengths, core values, and value adds, you need to be sure to back that up. You need to be sure to confirm what you're saying about yourself with some actual examples that illustrate your assets in action. You'll definitely be asked about these examples in an interview because many, if not most interviewers these days, they subscribe to that notion I mentioned earlier. The best indicator of future performance is past performance in similar specific situations. Now, in our banker example, an interviewer might ask the candidate, okay, you've mentioned you have a service-first approach. So tell me about a time when you applied that approach with a difficult customer. Now, to prepare for these types of questions in your interview prep, you want to first review the main assets that you've incorporated into your brand statement and that likely align with the requirements for the position you're seeking. And this, of course, is why it's important to do research on those key requirements before the interview. For each of those assets, then, reflect on your past experience and identify a specific situation where you successfully demonstrated that asset. Then write down a description of that situation using the STAR method. We'll talk a little bit here on the next few slides about what the STAR method is. When you jot down, set the scene, that is, describe what your role was, what the company was, who you're interacting with, and the challenge you had to address. That's the ST part of the STAR. This sets the context for the story you're going to tell about that asset. Then jot down all the actions you took and how you met the challenge by using the particular skill or value in question. Then jot down the result. How did your actions result in success? How did they create value? How did they make for a positive outcome? These are things then that you want to jot down as part of your preparation, anticipating that you're going to be asked about certain aspects of your assets. Now, I like to think of STAR as story. I'm very big on story. If you think of story, I think we all know when we read a good story. We've known that ever since we were children, right? A great story has three components, and they match up to the three components of the STAR. Good stories have a beginning, okay? And just in everyday terms, great stories, once upon a time, but one day. So it sets the scene. Where are we? But what was the challenge that was set up? What is the hero or the heroine facing there? And then there's the middle. It describes all the actions that they did, the quest that they took, the challenges that they addressed as they worked through. The main character did this, this, and this. And we want to have in a good story an ending until finally, and we want to have a good result until they lived happily ever after, right? We want to see the positive things that resulted out of the hero or heroine's actions. If you think of star as story, that's what you're doing when you're creating story star for each of the assets that you want to describe to people that you want to highlight for. Let's take a look then at a specific example of how our banker might create a star story for one of his key assets, conflict resolution. So let's say then that the banker who is looking for an opportunity anticipates being asked a question like this in an interview. Okay, what if I'm asked, could you tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult customer? He reflects on his experience as part of his preparation, and he recalls a recent situation where he dealt with a difficult customer. He can then prepare then in his mind a star story like this. The situation and task. When I was a teller at Hartsfield Bank, a customer became angry when we asked her to use the virtual teller machine to make a deposit. She insisted on seeing an in-person teller. Okay, so this is setting up the challenge. Actions. I told her I understood her frustration and asked why she was reluctant to use the virtual teller. She said, these machines confuse me. I then took the time to step her through how to use it. And the result. After I showed her, she said, this isn't so hard after all. She thanked me and later wrote a nice note to my manager, praising me for taking the time to listen and help her out. All right. So now he will have thought through that potential example, that ready-made example that he can describe to the interviewer, describing that asset of conflict resolution in action and the resulting value add of those actions. In this case, the result, the happily ever after, was a satisfied customer. So as part of your preparation, suggest look at your key assets. What do you want to highlight about yourself? What are you saying? These are my strengths. These are the things I do well. And jot down a star story or a couple of star stories for each of those key assets. Note, by the way, that some of these stories might reflect more than just one asset. In the example I give you here, the star story also reflects that service-first approach. And again, don't think of this as a script that you memorize and rattle off. Crafting these star stories for your key assets will give you a chance ahead of time to think of key experiences that created value in the past and that will likely create value in the future by your continuing exercise of the asset. So clearly having a well thought out personal brand as captured in a personal brand statement can be invaluable in the specific context of preparing for and participating in interviews for particular positions or to highlight your track record for potential clients. But more broadly, understanding your own personal brand can be a key part of another important aspect of seeking opportunities. And I'm talking about networking. Networking. It's simply about interacting and communicating with people. Now, networking as a way to seek opportunities is important because many opportunities aren't advertised out there. Those opportunities become communicated more via word of mouth. So networking, it's a way to know about these potential opportunities. But it's also a way to be known by others who might be able to connect you with those opportunities. And this is where your personal brand comes into play. You want others to have that good feeling about you and to know what you can contribute. So they'll think of you when opportunities become available. So where to start with networking? One valuable tool you can use is called a personal network map. It's a really versatile tool that can help you remind yourself of the network you already have and help you think about people you could potentially add to your network. So start by making a list of everyone you know, including present and past work colleagues and managers, professional acquaintances, school contacts, family, friends, community contacts. Then plot them on a map with you in the center. The people you know best and feel most comfortable with, would go into the circle next to yours. This is your literal inner circle. These are people, for example, you might ask to be on your personal board of directors, which I mentioned earlier. Then working out from that, plot the people with whom you feel less connected. Maybe the next circle then would conclude those you once knew them well, but maybe you haven't contacted them for a while. So there's some opportunities you might have there to be able to do some reconnection. And maybe the next circle then could be those people you know them less well. You don't really know them from the past, don't know them now, but maybe in some way they're familiar with your work. They know of you maybe through talking with mutual friends, or maybe you've done things that have come to their attention. You can define any of these outer circles the way you like, quite frankly. You have to do it a certain way. That's what makes it a very versatile tool. Now, we're talking about people already that you know or have known. Finally, or know your work. Finally, though, what I would suggest is identify people you may only barely know or not know at all. And these could be experts and thought leaders in your field or friends of friends. Plot them on the outermost circle. Now, I realize some people might be less comfortable with contacting people that they don't know very well or don't know at all, but I would encourage you to go into it with the mindset that people usually are open to helping others by giving them the benefit of their knowledge and experience. And I've definitely had this experience in my own career, reaching out to other people who I'd read about, who had read books and articles that were very interesting to me. I have always found that people are willing to take the time to help you and to really confer on you some of their knowledge that they have and can convey. Now, when you're doing this network map, there's a lot of different ways you can do it too. I'm a very big one for using sticky notes and flip charts on walls. So I would write down an individual name, one per sticky note. You could draw the circles on a flip chart and just start plotting people on there according to however you define those circles, working from your inner circle outward. As you do this exercise, you may well be surprised as to how many people you actually do know and the potential candidates contacts that you can make. All right, so once you've identified the people in your personal network or the people you could add to your personal network, you can then consider the various ways in which people could help you. Some of the potential ways in which people can help you include sponsor. These are people who can directly champion your progress by being your advocate for available opportunities. Educate. These are people who can help you practice and master new skills. This could include informational interviews to find out what someone does. Maybe the tasks involved in a certain role, the skills and characteristics that the role brings into play. Inform. These are people who can update you as to current and future opportunities in their organizations or in the job market. Lend an ear. These are people who could be a sounding board for ideas, challenges, and even concerns you have as you seek opportunities. And these are people, a lot of times, these are people who can be in your inner circle, who can just kind of give you a sense that, you know what, I'm not out there alone. I'm not there on my own. Other people have gone through this as well. So it's good to have those kinds of people who we can feel we can open up to a little bit. Advise. These are people who can help guide you in certain directions. They can give you advice as to what you might want to think of it to do. And then connect. These are people who can introduce you to other people for a variety of purposes. And this can open up channels you never expected. And that last item in particular, I think that demonstrates a very key point about networking. Just putting yourself out there and letting people know your goals and reminding them of your assets and value add can lead to payoffs just out of the blue. I had that happen to me several years ago. I want to give you an example that I experienced. Many years ago, I ran across a job posting with a company, and after doing some research, I found out that an ex-manager of mine with whom I had a good relationship now worked there. So I called her up. I hadn't talked to her for a while, but I called her up to find out more about the company and the job. And as we got to talking about it, I kind of decided it really wasn't what I was looking for. But then practically the next day, she got a call from a manager of another company asking if she would be interested in a job at that company. And she said, no, I'm really not looking to move, but hey, I just talked to someone yesterday who might be interested. Long story short, That company contacted me. I took that job. It turned out to be a perfect fit for me. Totally unexpected. But these are the ways that opportunities can drop. So the moral is, with networking, put yourself out there, talk to people, think about the various ways they might be able to help you. And to paraphrase Forrest Gump, when you do that, you never know what great things you're going to get. Here is one more key point then to keep in mind when it comes to networking. While a network can help you in many different ways, don't just be a taker. If you're seen as someone who only contacts others when you want something, that can quickly become part of your personal brand in a negative way. So find ways to give back to your network. For example, introduce them to other people that you know, bring them into your existing network. Share information that you might have that might be useful to them, or something you read that you thought, I know from our past conversations, this person might be interested in that. Comment on their postings. I'm the type of person, when I post something like on LinkedIn, I love it when I keep getting comments. So comment on people's postings, have some insight into some of the things that they did. Help people brainstorm ideas too. If somebody has an idea, you can be a sounding board for them. Give them some ideas about that as well. Join and support professional groups, and I would add here too industry groups. So for any particular profession or particular industry, there are multiple different groups that might be available. So certainly in the learning and development world, the Association for Talent Development, ATD, is the major professional association for people, and that ranges across many different industries. And also industry groups in the financial services world, multiple different industry groups that can also give you insight into a particular industry that you might be interested in. And then just simply show appreciation. Thank people. When people do something for you, when people give you information, respond, be grateful to them. And you might also add some additional information too, maybe a website, a posting, things like that, and send that along as well. So, covered a number of things. So in summary, thinking about a brand is a promise. It's a promise of a certain experience people will get when they interact with a certain company, and definitely interact with an individual as well, because people can have brands just as companies can. Be intentional about building your brand. This has been the theme that we've been focusing on here today. Really think through, what is it? What value do I provide? How do I use my assets in a distinctive, even unique way to provide value for other people and for organizations? And then we talked about crafting and using that personal brand statement, the 3 C's of it: create, communicate, and confirm. And then we covered the personal network. Identify that personal network. Think of the people that you know and who you might be able to add to that network. Leverage that network, different things that people can provide for you, but also don't just be there with your hand outstretched looking for something. Also give back to your personal network. So I want to close with a thought. As we've seen, a personal brand starts with reflecting on what you're all about, what makes you unique, and how you can contribute value to the world. Self-reflection builds awareness, but awareness counts for little unless you take action informed by that awareness. So as you create and communicate a personal brand statement, keep asking yourself, do my actions support my words? Do I live my brand every day? Am I consistently reflecting my brand promise in everything I do? I want to thank you all very much for your time today. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it back over to Kelly so that we can see if we have any questions from the presentation from the audience. So Kelly?
Yes, thank you, Jerry, for helping us to understand a little bit more about the personal brand statement, how to communicate it using the STAR method, and ways to continue building your personal brand. For everyone joining us today, as Jerry mentioned, we will now open it up for the Q&A portion of today's webinar. If you think of a question, go ahead and submit that using your questions feature in your attendee panel, and we'll go ahead and get started. So we did have a couple pre-submitted questions, so I'll start with those while everyone's submitting their questions. The first one says, how many qualities should I incorporate into my personal brand? Is there a general rule of thumb? or how long should my personal brand statement be?
Okay, great questions. I think as far as the length of the personal brand statement, what I have seen out there, I will say right up front, you're going to see a lot of variation in what different observers say is the length of it. I have generally seen 2 sentences. Make it 2 sentences, and that sounds pretty good as far as it gives you a chance to incorporate a number of different aspects, but it doesn't get too long as well. Um, as far as the number of skills or the number of assets to highlight, it's really up to you. I would say what comes to mind is this. I know that when I've been looking at best practices for resumes in the past, at the very top of a lot of resumes, you'll see like bullet items for the different characteristics and value adds people can have, just a quick snapshot. Usually I see about 10 as the maximum there. I think that might be a good rule of thumb, okay, kind of like in the 10 range, maybe a little less, a little more, but that seems to be a good range.
And then kind of piggybacking off that question, this next one's asking, how do I know which qualities are most important to highlight?
Okay. This is, I think, what is going to be guided by your goal as far as what you're looking for, what kind of a position or what kind of a situation you're looking for. Like I was kind of thinking, for example, when you're interviewing, say, for a particular position, that's where doing your research about the position is important. You can look and see what the job posting says, and usually you can glean from that what are some of the key skills, characteristics, assets that that particular position they'd be looking for there. And that's where you'd want to match it up with yours. So kind of use your sense of your goals for your position situation as a guide. Use that to also kind of look at job postings. And that will tell you, does that sound like that would be a good fit for me? And then you can highlight your particular assets. I would really say start with your own assets, all right? And then kind of use that as a guide to the different job postings and positions that you're looking for.
Thank you. Our next question says, is there a difference between my personal branding and professional branding? Should I have 2 separate brand statements?
Oh, that's a great question. My take on that is no, they're the same. And the reason I say that is I think this comes from a place of when you are looking for a position or a situation, you really want to look for something that will be a good fit for you. Now, that I think really comes from just who you are as a person. That if you can reflect who you are as a person in a role that you're in, that's going to be an example of a good fit. Now, not to say there may be some times when you're taking a position that it's got a lot of your personal characteristics that it brings to bear. There may be a few things that you're doing that maybe you need to develop, work on, have some development activities around. That's okay, all right? I mean, each one of us has things we can work on. I'm a big believer in taking the time to leverage strengths, but also work on those things that you need to work on. But the thing I think I would say is that if you're feeling a real big division between my personal self, my personal assets, and what I'm bringing to a job, that can be stressful overall, okay? Because it may be that you aren't feeling like this is a good fit for me. So I guess I would start from the position of saying, make them as close together as possible and actually just make it part of your personal brand.
And it looks like we have a couple more questions. So if anyone in our audience today wants to submit a question, go ahead and submit those now. Otherwise, we will end after these next couple and give everyone some time back. The next one says, how can I add pizzazz to my personal brand statement to make it unique? Or what have you seen that has kind of stood out the most in various other brand statements?
Oh, that's a great question. Pizzazz. Yeah, this is sort of like wearing your marketing hat, your self-marketing hat to that. I would say, and what I've shown here, this has been fairly, I guess, kind of straightforward in many ways, but I think there are certain positions where perhaps having that sense of flash and pizzazz would be good. I'll tell you the one thing is just go out and do some research and find online some examples of brand statements. If you do that, I think you're going to find some certain words that might keep popping up in different places that might give you a sense. It really is, I think, just kind of choosing words for yourself. This may sound a little odd too to say this, but use a thesaurus. Okay, if you've got a word that you're putting in there, authentic, okay, real. Well, what are perhaps some synonyms for that word? So really kind of play with the words themselves to say a word that maybe isn't used quite so much in order to really focus on that. So that's what I say is just kind of look at the words that you're using, put on your marketing hat, go out there and find some examples. And I think you'll be able to come up with something. And once again, it'll help you really stand out if you come up with a good one.
Now, looks like this is going to be our last question. So it's asking, how does social media tie into building your personal brand? And is it important for my personal brand?
Is very important for your personal brand. And this is one of those topics that as soon as you observe something, tomorrow there's going to be a whole different set of opportunities, new applications, new ways that people that do it. It is very important. LinkedIn, very much important. I really encourage you to make sure you're connected through LinkedIn. You're out there on LinkedIn. Personal websites or personal blogs using, for example, WordPress. I have a blog that I post using WordPress. I actually have another blog I have been writing for several years, but it's a way to actually, again, really extend the range of people that you can contact and connect. So yeah, definitely, there's so many different ways that and so many applications and opportunities through social media. It has really, I'm thinking many years ago, before social media was really that prevalent, it was difficult, much more difficult to be going out there looking for opportunities. You had to do a lot of legwork and footwork that's now really been expedited, facilitated by social media. So it's quite an opportunity actually for everybody.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you, Jerry, for again taking us through the content and answering all of these awesome questions. That is going to conclude our Q&A session for today. So we really appreciate you joining us and tuning in, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.